Welcome to our group presentation. That is Jennifer, which is I, Blake, and Karyna. We were lucky enough to tour the Star Tribune plant site, which I really enjoyed, and you are going to see how the newspaper gets all the way to your front door. So, Star Tribune utilizes a line flow because it is characterized by a linear sequence of operation. The paper moves from one step to the next in a sequence manner from beginning to end. The Star Tribune assembly is very effective and is able to produce up to 55,000 copies per hour when utilizing the full capacity of their 5 press that they have on site. It starts off with paper delivery. The train brings it in, rolls, as you can see in the picture 1. These rolls weigh about 1 ton. The rolls can dry up to about 6 weeks. They're held in the storage unit where the train can come into their facility, up to 6 carts. The paper is docked off, and then it actually defrosts there. So, which I thought was quite interesting. Also, all the paper is from the exact same farm. They want consistency in their product, and so that is why they use the same farm for that. The paper, in printing the newspaper, the paper is put into a printer by a robotic liftwork called an AGV, which is an automatic guide vehicle, which are used by laser guides and programmed to specific routes throughout the facility. So you eliminate people in that aspect. And then once the plates are created, they are put on the printing machine. These plates, up to a plate, 4 plates are created, and it gives you the 4 pages to make the full color in disposable aluminum plates. The plates are manually ordered and put on one of the 5 press, because there's 5 press, and each of the press are like different colors. You could think of like your yellow, your magenta, your black, your white, and your blue. And they're all defined by their color. So they'll say press red, press white, blue, yellow, and green. And then you get your final product. The paper goes through the conveyor belt and the cutting machine, and then a folding machine. And then, of course, delivered in what they call their mailroom. And it is divided by the regions that they're delivered in. Each of the sections of the paper is assembled actually manually. And the advertisements are manually inserted by the paper delivery boy, or delivery person, I guess you could say. And then they're bundled and wrapped in everything and put into trucks. And then they are actually brought to a distribution center that brings out to deliver the newspapers manually. Overall, the process is very effective and is very laid out. The machines were well placed, and the flow between each stage was really clean. A lot of the inefficiencies of the process is tied to transportation between each step of the product. So while that's done by the automatic conveyors, it is still time consuming. Just getting everything printed and then brought to what they call the mail room, which everything is divided, and then getting it all situated in order. This is a video I'd like to share with you on how this the AGV systems of the paper reel is transported at the unit.
Star Tribune newspaper reaches about 1.5 million readers a week. We produce approximately 400,000 daily products. and just under 700,000 Sunday newspapers. We wanted to replace our old AGV system with one that basically provided the same functionality. We wanted to take a system that supplies as many as 1,600 rolls of newsprint a week to our presses, but in addition, we wanted to be able to better track and control our inventory and our use of newsprint. The team unanimously recommended Edgerman Automation as the vendor of choice. They were the only vendor that offered us an ability of really moving the rolls of newsprint on arms that extend out from the vehicle and load the rolls rather than crab into location to load rolls. We felt that this was a very desirable situation. Edgerman has stood behind us and worked with us to solve our issues, to fix our problems, and is providing us with an AGV system that I'm confident that will take us well into the future.
There you can just see how streamlined those machines work. It was really, I thought it was quite fascinating personally. So moving on, Star Tribune uses a make-to-stock process because it must produce high qualities of newspaper every day with little to no customization. Star Tribune must also estimate the number of newspapers that it needs to produce throughout the subscription and one-off purchases. The shelf life of the stock is short, however, since each paper is unique to that day for the publisher. Customizations are really also hard to do with such a tight timeline. It would be very difficult to provide meaningful customization for each section of the newspaper, especially because they do mass customizations. You can, actually, one of the tidbits that I learned was on the upper left corner of your Star Tribune paper, there are stars there, and those stars tell you how many times they've actually customized that front page. So here in the example you see on the slide, this one has 3 stars there. So for an example, the 35W collapse, the bridge collapsing in 2007, there was over 100 revisions of that one single day due to updating death tolls. However, the revision happens with the standard flow of the operation equipment. So as they get the information, they update it, but continue to issue and run that newspaper that was already sent out. They don't stop that process, they let it keep going. But there is very to little variance in the newspaper outside of Star Tribune publishing selected sections of their newspaper, like the Pioneer Press and local other newspapers around. They run their newspaper usually about 20,000 copies, which is significantly less than the main produce of the Star Tribune itself. As a result, the majority of the paper has very limited to have customizations, and they vary throughout the day that it's sent out. Non-values added steps in the manufacturing flow include the storage of the paper roll upon the arrival of the facility, storage of a non-value added activity. Paper rolls are stored up to 6 weeks, as I mentioned before. There is also a lot of transporting the rolls after storage with the automatic vehicles that move them from the next stage of production and transporting that paper themselves between the station and the line. Excuse me. Also, another example of non-value is the variety section in the Sunday newspaper is actually printed a few days in advance before it is actually distributed with like the Sunday paper, because it's not dependent on time-sensitive information. This paper is normally printed and stored and waiting to be assembled on early Sunday morning. Value-added steps included when the newspaper goes through the cutting and folding machines in order to be transported from a long straight line of paper into paper that can actually be custom delivered to the customers. The Star Tribune is ISO certified, and most of the quality control is done electronically unless a person sees an error by chance while the press are running or manually reviewed afterwards. This manual review happens in the control room, and there's one person press for 5 total. The paper is printed and is traveled to the control room where an employee will review each run multiple times to make sure it is free of defects, like when you prints photos and things like that, to make sure everything is colored, coming out correctly, and the words aren't doubled up on each other. The main quality of paper is stored in a climate-controlled room, as I mentioned before, which is able to add the moisture to help the paper sure that it doesn't stretch or start to flake. So it is kept at a certain temperature to have moisture and stuff to take the ink. For the printing, they use an alternative proof as a main mean of managing the quality. Once the editor from the other facility sends over the paper electronically, it is first run and developed on a plate to see what the finished product would look like. If it is approved, another attributes that are up to spec, like colors, it is run and made on the press. If any changes are needed to be made after the proofing is run during or both the printings, they restart and begin again until the proof meets the specific colors and accuracy to avoid errors. A large source of the quality control in the color and accuracy is particularly with the specific color codes and registration colored plates by advertisers. One example is Bachmann and their platted purple. The color collaborates tools to use the check and verify the color code on the finishing product. This is then cross-referenced with the original electronic version sent from the editors at the facility or on the ad sent by the advertisers. Outside of the control room, a full-time quality control is entered automatically. This is a very minimal manual quality check. There is an error in production, such as an ink blotch or up to the pressing jam. Those are electronically monitored and will stop the press to start over again if an error occurs. I didn't see any evidence that continuous process improvements targeted towards a specific run of a paper or process is more situational and not common. As far as we could tell, there was no quality charts posted. The scraps used, again, as I mentioned, were from a tree farm for their paper. They come from the same location in order to keep the paper consistent. Anything left unused or damaged or defect is recycled and used elsewhere. The paper free of printing and all the paper left at the end of the roll that isn't used in that run is consolidated and re-rolled into a single paper roll so that it can be used again in future production runs. The waste and scrap is compacted and recycled. The main source of SCP is moderated by the waste specs. Right now, after the paper is unloaded from the roll, it is brought to a press with electrical monitoring and begins monitoring the waste and operating status of the printing press as the paper rolls through. The waste is measured by qualitative and is helpful for setting up specific specifications to confirm that they've looked through the paper and how it is run. There is also many specifications on the press themselves measuring during the operation, like the speed, the temperature, and the rate of ink that is applied. Most of these stats are electronically logged and only reviewed by an employee if needed, and it has arised. They would be wasting ink and paper, and this would cost the company money, and it would be reprinted if there is time. If they do not offer for advertisements for free. This is by far the biggest consequences of defective product run, as each paper costs about $4.50 to produce, and selling for a MSRP of $1.50. The bulk of the income generated for the paper is from the advertisement, so offering them free or sending money to reduce papers with a lost profit. This is when the paper has to be compact into waste and the press has to restart. The cost can accumulate very quickly when taking about 100 of thousands of papers from a single run and having to redo them. So here are some of the resources that we had used. Even though the newspaper industry has gone through dramatic changes in the last few years, Star Tribune continues to refine the process system by increasing effectiveness and in order to reduce costs and improve quality and consistency. Most of these efficiencies were the results of increasing automation from loading to unrolling the rolls of paper to various steps in the production line and to the quality control. So that is the Star Tribune project, and again, we really felt like we all enjoyed learning about this. So thanks again for the opportunity.